The anime starts with a young man playing various video games. While playing one, he suddenly gets transported into the game's world, where the character Ato, which he had been controlling, appears to him, surprising him. Ato confirms she is real, and he finds out the game he was playing from his sickbed is a simulation of ruling nations, set in the dark world of Fantaria. Ato was his favorite character, and she starts talking about the king, making him wonder, is he playing the king's role? He thought she meant the leader of Minogura, but Ato clarified she meant King Takto, who achieved many milestones on the nightmare difficulty level. He did this using the civilization, said to be the hardest to control, the Desolation civilization. He was the first player and proudly topped the user rankings. Takto was shocked and wondered how Ato knew this, but she remembered everything, including everything he asked her to do in the game. They had invaded the world many times and lost repeatedly, so there was no need to worry. Takto told her that he copied her playstyle because he wanted to be as strong as her, and he was happy talking to her now. Ato felt the same great feeling. Then Takto looked up at the sky, amazed by its shape. He asked if she had summoned him here, but she hadn't. They quickly realized this wasn't the sky, but that they were in the world of the Eternal Nations, a place unfamiliar to Takto. Ato wondered if this was called a miracle, and she approached, expressing how much she loved the moment they met. She asked if they could start over, but Takto didn't know where they were. Ato thought it might be her world or a completely different one. Then she suggested, like before, that they start fresh together and build a kingdom. Takto was shocked and didn't know what was happening to him, but he agreed to Ato's suggestion to start as they had before. He asked her to build their civilization a kingdom for both of them, making Ato happy. Then she introduced herself as Ato the Protector, a child born from the Guardians destined to destroy the world. She assured him that from that moment on, her mind was under King Takto's command. She asked him to descend to the lowest ranks, and Takto felt excited, telling her their civilization was the most wicked ever. Takto asked, "So, you know what Minogura must do first, right?" Then they decided to retire from the world and close their doors to outsiders. After that, Takto summoned a scouting animal, but they both felt disgusted by its appearance. Takto sensed their Minogura civilization was ancient and ruled by evil and ruin, and they should always remember that before making wrong moves. Ato believed they should be cautious about being discovered by others, which was a strict rule in the early game stages. Then Takto told the scouting insect to launch and explore everything nearby, and Ato warned it that if it disappointed King Takto, it must complete its mission. The insect sped off, but Ato felt uneasy because it resembled a servant carrying out orders. Takto realized he could share the insect's field of vision, just like in the game, but it was costly. He would need 100 magic energy points, and they only had 100 left. Building a settlement to serve as their base would require 20 points. Ato thought the cost was high and warned against wasting too much energy. Takto then suggested creating a warrior to fight for them, but with limited magic energy, that wasn't an option. Ato gratefully promised to fight seriously if necessary. Takto noticed that Ato would grow stronger over time, but her current level was 3, meaning Minogura's situation was quite risky, and any battle could lead to their destruction. Ato urged him to smile a little. Meanwhile, the insect continued exploring, and Takto followed it. Through that, he mapped the surrounding terrain and saw it was forested, but they hadn't encountered any monsters yet. Ato guessed the forest would be a good hiding spot for monsters, but found it strange none had appeared. Since Takto didn't see what he thought might be food sources, he decided to keep exploring for a while. Ato felt she wasn't much help and apologized, but Takto said it didn't matter. He was happy she was by his side. Ato was surprised by his words and moved closer, touched by what he said. Suddenly, a group of dark elves appeared near them. It was a large group. Ato thought they were in a fantasy world, where dark elves are usually neutral but tend toward evil neutrality. So, they felt somewhat reassured. Takto asked Ato if she thought this was the Eternal Nations world because if they found another settlement for their civilization, it would be bad. They considered the consequences of war and hoped to avoid it as much as possible. They saw the need to hide at first. Ato thought neighboring another civilization would be very annoying. She suggested that if it was confirmed, they should flee. Takto agreed since Minogura valued peace and harmony above all, and Ato believed war brought out barbarity in any case. Then Takto decided they would watch the Dark Elves to gather info about the area. If luck wasn't on their side, they'd escape, and Ato agreed. More Dark Elves appeared, surprising everyone. The scene triggered a memory of when they had wandered these elves in the forest, led by their chief, Gia. After being expelled from their lands, they had no place to go, and their children couldn't survive. Gia thought the forest was full of plants, and there must be food. But Emily knew there was a cursed forest nearby, on the edge of the unknown land of Idroja. She recalled sealing something in that land, and believed no thriving life was there. Gia thought that was superstition because the trees grew well and urged her not to give up. He told himself not to give up either because his people awaited him, and he couldn't leave until he met Ato and Takto. Back in the present, Takto seemed to him like a great force of evil, making him deeply afraid for his people and soldiers. He couldn't afford to make any wrong decisions. Gia came forward and knelt before Takto, introducing himself himself as the chief warrior of the Mazaram clan of the elves. Gia apologized to Takto for entering the king's forest without permission. Otto thought it was good that Gia apologized, as he had intruded on their land without permission. She asked him why he did it. Gia told her that his clan used to live in the central lands of Idaragia. As he spoke, he felt relieved that they understood his situation, but she became angry and told him to get straight to the point. Gia told her that they had been driven from their land and had nowhere else to go. He thought to himself that it was wrong to want to sugarcoat the truth. Then, Takto asked Gia if their bodies were frail. Gia was shocked by the question, but replied that the persecution had been very violent. He said they came to this land fleeing injustice because they ran out of food on the way, and were also trying to evade their pursuers. They couldn't get more food and hadn't eaten in a long time. Gia felt they didn't deserve all this trouble, and that the tribulation wasn't their right. All they wanted was to live peacefully in a place of their own. Then Takto offered them apples, which surprised Gia. Takto told them these apples were theirs and asked if he knew their taste. Gia replied that he had never seen them before and that their fruit was strange to him. He thought it was rude to eat in front of him without sharing anything. But the rest of Gia's soldiers ate the apples immediately and loved them. Takto showed them apples of a different color, and Edo thought Gia should thank Takto for being generous with them. Gia pleaded with Takto, telling him that there were hungry children and elders among them who hadn't eaten either. He said they could become skin and bones, and he wanted to take some of the apples for the rest of his people, wishing to offer them instead of eating alone. This made Takto sympathetic, and he offered Gia a lot of different food, which amazed Gia. He told himself that they were the elves who fled the light, which is why they are called dark elves, and that they live thanks to the light elves, forced to live in darkness away from the light. No one had ever extended a helping hand to them, but Takto offered them food and told them it was theirs now. The elf soldiers thanked Takto, and Gia asked for the king's name, but he didn't answer. Then we moved to where the rest of the dark elves were, where a very sick lady was. Her daughter told her that Gia, their chief, would come with food now. She was very sad for her mother. When they smelled food nearby, it caught everyone's attention. Then Gia appeared and told them he had brought a lot of food and asked them to get ready to prepare it. The young and old were fed and became very happy. One of the elves asked Gia where he got this food. He told her he found it somewhere, and Takto remembered that memory. Then the elves went to sleep while Gia stayed awake alone. Then the elder Moltar came to him, and Moltar told Gia that the food he brought was amazing, and he had never seen anything like it in his life. Gia had the same opinion because he tasted the food. Moltar asked Gia what happened. Gia told him he encountered mythical creatures deep in the forest. Moltar asked what kind of myths. Gia wondered if Emily had told him anything about a being that was sealed in the cursed lands. Moltar inquired if he had met the King of Ruin. He told him about some legends and ancient books, that when the world reaches saturation, the King of Ruin will appear, bringing chaos to everything and forcing people to start life anew. But he didn't know how true these stories were, but he realized they couldn't be lies. Gia asked Moltar if he was describing himself as this, but Takto didn't introduce himself to him, but he was terrifying enough to earn the title of King of Ruin. Moltar asked if he talked to this king, but Gia told him it was beyond their understanding, but there was a young woman serving him. She explained some of the king's words to them, but Moltar didn't think this was the King of Ruin, but he also wasn't a benevolent being at all. After his stomach was full and he regained some of his magical energy, it became clear to him that this forest was unnatural, and he should have paid attention to that. Moltar asked Gia if he had offered anything in return for the food to the king. When Moltar learned that Gia had offered nothing, he didn't feel comfortable. Moltar criticized Gia, saying it was not normal for an evil being to give gifts for free, but all Gia did was explain what they had been through when asked. Moltar wondered why someone like the King of Ruin would do this. Gia guessed he did it out of mercy and sympathy for their situation. The king overwhelmed them with his generosity, which angered Moltar because he had bowed to him and become his follower. But Gia denied it, and Moltar asked him why he knelt to him. He told him that this expression shows respect. But Gia felt that the king had helped them and offered them aid when they were starving. Moltar expressed his doubts, considering him an evil being, but Gia had no other choice, and they believed they could argue now because their stomachs were full, and the king had provided them with food that satisfied their hunger. Then Gia felt let down and asked him what he should have done, but Moltar had no answer for him and apologized for it, affirming that he had done everything he could. Moltar, as the leader of the Dark Elves, would now negotiate with the king, and he had lived for over 2 centuries. It was natural for him to find a solution to this, and he was waiting for the day he would live in peace. So he asked Gia when that day would come. Then we moved to Takto, where Atto asked him to sit up straight. She asked him how he could spend such rare magical energy on something like this, but Takto felt pity for them, which angered Atto, because they had already started establishing Mainogura and were still ignorant of what surrounded them. He apologized to Ado for using magical energy without her knowledge, and promised that next time he would ask her before doing this, and asked her not to be angry, but she denied being angry. Then Takto told her he would grant any request she made, which surprised Atto, and she saw no need to make such a promise. Takto told Atto that he needed her, and he apologized for opposing her wise decision. He asked her to issue orders as she wished. However, Atto told him that he couldn't speak with the elves smoothly. While he spoke with her very easily, words failed to come out when he stood before others. Atto thought he was playing the role of a strict leader who disdains long speeches and leaves detailed negotiations to his followers. Takuto realized he was bad at communication and cried, which saddened Ado greatly, and she asked him to stop crying.